Hey, Bio 500, I just wanted to take some time to talk to you about your term project, which we are going to officially, finally begin working on this week. Nano's here helping. No, he's not. He's been completely silent this entire time, and now that I start recording, he's walking across. So there we are. Anyway, I wanted to just sort of go over what your term project is going to look like, or at least sort of what my vision for it is going to look like. So I guess kind of the deal is that we are working with this asynchronous online space. And so things that we might normally try to do in terms of project delivery don't always really work in this sort of space. So the idea I have for how we're going to swing this is a little bit complex. So, I'll go ahead and acknowledge that right off the bat. And truthfully, it might not work. But we're going to try it. I think part of, having this online term, gives us some space to sort of play around with new ideas. And so that's kind of what we're going to try. I think this will work. I'm pretty sure it will work, but it is possible that in the coming, week or so that, I'll kind of realize like, oh, gee whiz, or I may hear feedback from you guys like, oh, gee, like that really isn't going to work super well. And if that's the case, then we'll reevaluate. So anyway, after all that build up, I guess I should tell you what I'm talking about. So I'm thinking that for our final project, I want to do something that I see as a fundamental skill in terms of scientific communication, and that is the poster presentation. So if any of you have been to Gelb, and you definitely have, you have almost certainly seen an example of what I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about are these awesome poster presentations. You usually find them by the classroom where like the animals are and everything, full of research that previous students have done, generally for Bio 600. Now, Bio 600 is the only course that requires that type of poster presentation. But, thinking about the fact that, many of you may not take Bio 600, right? Like most students generally don't take that. It's still an important skill, whether or not you move forward with the sciences at all. It's an important skill set to be able to create a research poster that shows very succinctly the highlights of your research that you can use as essentially a one slide for your presentation. So we'll talk about what those look like specifically in just a second. But what I'm going to be having you present on is something that I think is really interesting and cool. So we're going to be looking at issues of food justice, access, and security, specifically as they relate to sustainable practices and commercialization of agriculture. So that's a lot of terminology, right? And essentially what I'm talking about is like, how has the industrialization of things like vegetable crops, right, like that humans rely on, things like soy, corn, sugar, etc., how is the industrialization of that type of agriculture and, agriculture in the form of like meat and dairy farming, how have those contributed to issues of inequity issues of inequity specifically for food? So how has this impacted food access, food security, and sustainability? And so what's going to be cool about this project is there's a lot there. There's a lot of different ways that you can sort of explore this. And I really want you to sort of choose your own adventure here and go down a path that you find interesting, that you want to continue researching, right? Find something that you find, fascinating, interesting, exciting. I promise you that'll make this a lot easier, right? Like nobody loves doing projects, especially in the last few weeks of class, which I kind of can't believe we have like 3 weeks left. That's absolutely wild. But know also that in these final 3 weeks, as I'm giving you this project, we are going to be sort of lightening our load through the rest of the course to account for that. So I'm going to be giving you sort of goals each day. So each Tuesday and Thursday, when we would have like our content days, I'm going to be giving you sort of goals to shoot for in there. So there's nothing to submit for that, but it'll just be on your checklist, essentially a note that says, okay, work on your project. This is what you should be doing for this day. And my hope is that that maybe keeps you on track and helps organize you a little bit, where now we've got this bigger project on top of probably several bigger projects that you have popping up in your classes. So let's go ahead and see a little bit sort of what I'm talking about in terms of like visually, like what am I asking you to actually make? Okay, so here is sort of what I'm talking about. So there is a lot going on here, and let me see if I can maybe adjust this a little bit. Ooh, and now I'm like doing all kinds of stuff with it. I feel like such a boomer with this. Okay, anyway, so, oh my goodness. There we go. I was having a lot of trouble with my screen sharing for some reason. It's like the first time this has ever happened. Anyway, so this is sort of what I'm talking about when I say we're doing a poster presentation. So if you were starting to think trifold, no, that's not what we're doing. We are going to do something like this. Essentially, it's one PowerPoint slide that has kind of the categories of a lab report. It's almost like a condensed visual lab report on one slide. And so this is one that I made when I was in college. So this is looking at genetic changes associated with pancreatic cancer. And so what we've got here is we've got like an introduction, materials and methods, results, sections, conclusion, and acknowledgments. So your section, your poster, sorry, probably would not have an acknowledgement section. This is generally reserved for posters where there was some sort of like laboratory research. If you were working with like a mentor scientist, or if you had received certainly any money, any funding to conduct this research, if anyone was like paying you to do this research and facilitating that, you would put that in your acknowledgements. But that's, I mean, this is your school project, so you're not going to have anything there. But so what I'm looking for essentially is, a trimmed down version of something like this. So things you would not have are materials and methods either. You wouldn't have materials and methods, but what you would have is probably an expanded introduction section. So something that sort of, gives you a good overview, but very, very succinct, right? This is a poster. We only have one slide, right? So we want to make this as succinct and brief as possible. And so what I usually recommend is that you treat each section as if it's like a jumping off point. So don't feel like you need to put absolutely every piece of information into a section, because you're going to be there with your poster to explain it and to fill in the blanks. So I'm going to have you create an introduction section, right? So that one's going to be fairly long, and you're going to basically just introduce us to your topic. You're going to give us an overview of your topic. This research really should focus on the biological component of whichever aspect of the issue that you're looking at. So when I say biological, we could be looking at anything from physical, so like an anatomical or physiological changes that occur within the body, within the human body. We could look at evolutionary consequences, if there are any sort of like long, distant effects of, what you're looking at on species and their evolution. You could also take more of an ecological approach, which I suspect is probably what many of you will do, because that is maybe the most obvious connection. And looking at issues of biodiversity and conservation. And so this really should include some results and figures. Now, I'm looking for things like, graphs and data, right? Like this is a science class, I want graphs and data and gross numbers, right? And so included with your results and figures, I also want you to have a figure legend with all of your figures. So it wouldn't really be results, but it would more just be like figures and data. And so a figure legend, in case anybody hasn't seen that concept before, is really just it's a couple of short sentences or a little blurb that says, puts the image into context. So it says, okay, this is what this image is, this is what's happening in it, and this is sort of what we care about there. And then, of course, you'll have a conclusion also. So you will have a conclusion statement that sort of ties together all of your research. So I realize now that I didn't, I never really said how, what my crazy plan was to, get this going. And so like, I'm thinking that, we are going to make these posters, and what I would really like to do, what I hope will work, is I think that we should do live presentations along with your posters. So when I say live, I mean, let's schedule a time, and I will, any time that works for you, I will meet with you. Whole thing should take maybe like 10-15 minutes. I will meet with you, and you will give me your presentation, and it will be complete. Why do I want to do it live? Because I think there's a lot of skill in presenting something live that you kind of lose when you're recording it. Now, here's the thing. Of course, if your schedule doesn't allow, or my schedule doesn't allow, or if, our time zones are really, really disparate and it's going to be really, really tricky to coordinate, we don't have to do it live. Or if you're just like, oh my God, Miss Finney, like the thought of doing that is making me sick to my stomach. First off, I think you should work through it, and let's practice it anyway, because I'm here and you're there and there's nothing to be scared of. But, if it's just not going to happen, then of course you can record it, and I will, evaluate it asynchronously. The other thing that the big thing that I think may or may not work is I want to get you an audience, right? Because presenting to me is one thing. And there's value in that, right? Like there's value in having your instructor evaluate your work, but I think there's also value in having somebody a little bit outside of the group evaluate you. And so for that reason, I am inviting Bio 100 students from both my class and other people's classes to come in and watch your presentations also. And so whether or not you do this live or asynchronously, whatever winds up shaking out, my thought is that we will have a sort of Q&A at the end of this. So you'll do your presentation. This will probably take anywhere between like 5, 6, maybe up to 10 minutes, maybe as much as 15 minutes, depending on where we wind up. and how, succinct you are and how brief you are. But at the end of that, there will be an opportunity for whoever is in the audience, so the Bio 100 students and me, to ask questions. And this will be part of your evaluative process. And so successfully like completing the project includes answering those questions. So that part may be done asynchronously or synchronously, depending on how things shake out. But that's kind of what I'm thinking so far. Interested in your thoughts. Let me know if you think that's totally crazy and it's not going to work. I think it will, and I think it will be really cool. I really think that you guys will get a lot out of this. I've spoken to some of you who, have expressed that you're kind of nervous public speakers, and I think that's totally fine. But I will tell you that, nothing helped me get over my own public speaking nerves more than doing these types of projects and having to speak to peers and instructors about my work. So anyway, just to quickly recap, you're gonna be doing a poster presentation on the issue of, social issues related to food justice as it relates to commercialization of agriculture. You're going to research that very thoroughly, create your presentation. So in addition to the poster, you'll be presenting it either live or asynchronously. And then there will be a Q&A component, potentially with an audience of Bio 100 students also. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'll put a little time mark in case you want to skip to the TLDR of this whole thing. I know that was kind of a lot of information. I am still truthfully kind of working out some of the kinks in my brain logistically, but I realized that with 3 weeks left in the term, we really cannot wait any longer to get you guys started. So come talk to me. Let me know if you have any questions. Shoot me an email. Would love to see you. And I hope you have a good day.